In the far edges of the Orion Arm, the galaxy was restless. Rumors traveled faster than ships, whispered in markets sung by traders, and passed through secret channels of diplomats. These rumors carried one message: Earth was no longer weak. For centuries, the great powers of the galaxy had looked down on humans. They were seen as noisy, emotional, and reckless. Their world was considered unimportant, their fleets laughable, their influence non-existent. The mighty Cathari Dominion called them children who had barely left their cradle. But something had changed, and now fear spread like fire. It began with silence. When the Dominion first sent demands to Earth, there was no answer. They had expected quick surrender, perhaps even begging. Instead, humans sent nothing back. The silence worried them. Then scouts were sent, only to vanish. When fleets were sent, they were destroyed, cut down by weapons and tactics no one had seen before. Each defeat was small, yet strange enough to raise alarm. How could humans win against ships 5 times their size? How could colonies with little protection repel entire task forces? The galaxy demanded answers, but there were none. Above the blue and white sphere of Earth, a ship waited in darkness. Its name was Resolute Dawn. The ship was new, built in secret, hidden from spying eyes. It was larger than anything humans had made before, carrying weapons that had never been tested in open war. On its bridge stood Captain Laura Mitchell. She was calm, though her heart carried the weight of her people. Laura was not a legend. She was not known beyond her home planet. But today she stood on the edge of history. Her crew worked quietly, each one aware of the storm outside. At the targeting console sat Lieutenant Daniel Harper, his hands steady as he made final adjustments. He had trained his whole life for this day, yet he still felt the pressure in his chest. Near him was Rachel Porter, the engineer who had helped design the heart of the ship. She was younger than most of the officers, but her knowledge of the new hyperdrive cores made her vital. Around them, others performed their duties with a silent focus. There was no shouting, no panic, only resolve. Laura looked at them and felt pride. She thought of the billions of people below, watching the skies with fear, families huddled together, unsure if this was their last day. Children asked questions parents could not answer. Across the oceans and continents, leaders tried to show courage, but even they felt helpless before the vast alien fleets gathering. Laura knew the truth. Humanity had never faced such danger. But she also knew something else. Humans had never given up when pushed. They always found a way. Far above, beyond the moon, sensors showed the Dominion's fleet taking shape. Dozens of warships, their hulls black and red, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. The Cathari believed this was the end. To them, humans were already beaten. Yet Laura stood firm. Her ship waited, hidden in shadow, engines silent, power masked. She knew the moment was near. Daniel broke the quiet. "Targeting systems ready, Captain." His voice was low but steady. Rachel added, "Hyperdrive core stable. Shields at full capacity." "Weapons are charged," Laura nodded. She did not raise her voice. She simply said, "Good, we wait." The crew exchanged brief looks, but no one spoke further. Outside, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. While the ship prepared, whispers echoed across the galaxy. On distant stations, merchants told stories of human ships appearing from nowhere, striking with precision, then vanishing. On council worlds, ambassadors shouted warnings that humans had become unpredictable. Many laughed at these tales, calling them lies. Others were not so sure. Something was different about Earth. Something had shifted. And deep in their hearts they wondered, had the humans discovered a power beyond anyone's reach? Inside the Dominion fleet, commanders mocked the silence from Earth. To them, humans were cowards hiding behind their world. They thought this battle would be quick, a show of force to crush resistance. Yet a few younger officers felt uneasy. The last encounters had not gone as planned. Fleets had been destroyed without explanation. But their leaders silenced them, calling their doubts foolish. On Earth's surface, life went on, though heavy with fear. In cities, people gathered around screens, listening to every report. In villages, elders told stories of old wars, trying to give hope. Farmers looked at the sky between their work, knowing their world's fate was being decided beyond their reach. Humanity, in all its forms, waited. Back on the Resolute Dawn, Laura walked across the bridge slowly, her eyes calm, her steps measured. She stopped near Daniel and Rachel. "This ship," she said softly, "is more than metal and weapons. It is a promise that we will not bow. No matter what happens, remember that." Daniel nodded, gripping the console tighter. Rachel gave a faint smile, though her heart raced. The others listened in silence. They all felt the same truth. This was not just another mission. This was a moment that would decide if humans were free or enslaved. Minutes passed. Then the alarm chimed softly. Enemy ships were moving closer. The Dominion fleet had begun its descent toward Earth. The time had come. Laura raised her hand, signaling readiness. Her voice was steady, though her heart pounded. Power up engines. Prepare for emergence. Rachel's fingers moved quickly, feeding energy into the core. Lights across the bridge brightened as the ship awakened. Daniel locked the first targets. Across the crew, tension grew, but no one faltered. This was their stand. The blackness of space shifted as the Resolute Dawn came alive. Its hull, made of alloys unknown to the galaxy, gleamed faintly against the stars. Weapons extended from hidden ports humming with energy. The engines lit, sending a soft glow that pushed back the shadows. And then, with a soundless roar, the warship emerged from hiding. At that moment, the galaxy trembled. Sensors on alien ships lit with alarms. The Dominion fleet detected a vessel larger than anything they had expected. Fear struck their hearts, though they would not admit it. This was no ordinary human ship. This was something else entirely. Laura stood tall at the center of the bridge. She looked out into the vastness, where dozens of enemy ships waited. She knew the galaxy was watching. Not just the Dominion, but every power in the stars. All were waiting to see what humans would do. Her voice carried across the bridge. We hold the line. For Earth. For humanity. Daniel's hands tightened on the controls. Rachel's eyes fixed on the glowing core. The crew straightened, ready for what was to come. No one spoke of fear anymore. There was only resolve. The warship moved forward, its presence a silent challenge to the galaxy. For too long, humans had been underestimated. For too long, they had been ignored. But now, with the Resolute Dawn leading the way, Earth would no longer be silent. And as the first clash loomed in the darkness, every heart on board knew the truth. This was the beginning of something greater. Humanity's story in the stars was only just starting. The galaxy, once dismissive, would soon remember this day forever. The Galactic Council chamber was filled with noise and fear. The Great Hall, carved from crystal and lit by glowing stars suspended in the air, had never been so restless. Delegates from hundreds of worlds shouted over one another, their voices sharp, their bodies trembling. The news of what had happened on the edge of Earth's system had reached them. A human ship had destroyed Dominion vessels. Not one or two, but entire groups of them, and now whispers told of a warship so powerful that it had no equal. For many, this was impossible. For others, it was terrifying. The representative from the Cathari Dominion struck the floor with his staff, his scaled body shaking with anger. Lies, he roared, his voice echoing through the chamber. These humans are not capable of such strength. They are weak. Their ships are small. Their fleets are scattered. This is nothing but rumor meant to frighten us. But not everyone agreed. A tall delegate from the Lyari collective leaned forward, her silver skin shimmering. I have seen the reports. Dominion ships have not returned. The data is clear. Something has changed on Earth. If you ignore this, you endanger us all. Voices rose again, filling the hall with fear and doubt. Some wanted to believe the humans had found a weapon that threatened the galaxy. Others wanted to believe it was an exaggeration. But deep inside, most of them felt it. Something was different. The silence from Earth was not weakness. It was warning. Far away from the council chamber aboard the Resolute Dawn, preparations continued. The ship floated in the shadow of Earth's moon, its systems alive and waiting. Captain Laura Mitchell stood on the bridge, her eyes steady as she studied the fleet gathering beyond Earth's orbit. She knew the Dominion had not yet seen the full power of her ship, but they would soon. Lieutenant Daniel Harper reviewed the targeting systems again and again. He wanted no mistakes when the time came. He glanced at Rachel Porter, who sat beside the glowing core readouts. Rachel's hands moved quickly, her mind focused on the numbers that controlled the hyperdrive and shield systems. She whispered calculations under her breath, making sure everything remained balanced. The ship's survival depended on her work. Around them, other officers worked with quiet intensity. They all knew the truth. The Dominion believed humans would kneel, but this ship was their answer. It was not just a weapon. It was proof that Earth would not surrender. Laura walked slowly across the bridge, speaking softly to her crew. "You know why we are here," she said. "We are not here for glory. We are not here to prove we are stronger than anyone else. We are here because humanity deserves to live free. They came to take our world and we said no. Today we show them what that means." Her words carried through the room and every officer lifted their head a little higher. They were scared, but they were also proud. No one had ever thought humans could stand against the galaxy's oldest empires. But now here they were. In the Dominion fleet, commanders prepared their ships for the attack. Admiral Korath, an old warrior with sharp ridges across his head, sneered at the reports of the human warship. "One ship cannot stand against a fleet," he told his officers. "They may have surprised us once, but this time we are ready. We will crush them." But even as he spoke, doubt spread among his younger officers. They remembered the stories of destroyed cruisers and vanished patrols. They had seen the data that made no sense. Railgun fire faster than light, shields that bent energy in strange ways. Maneuvers no known ship could match. Something about humans was changing, and they feared the Admiral underestimated them. On Earth, fear touched every city and every home. Families gathered in front of screens, watching the skies. News channels repeated the same question: would humanity survive? Some prayed, some cried, some simply held each other. Across oceans, leaders sent messages of courage, but even they waited nervously for the outcome. All eyes turned to the hidden ship above. Inside the Resolute Dawn, the silence was heavy as the fleet outside moved closer. Daniel leaned over his console and whispered, "Targets are locking in, Captain." Rachel looked up, her face pale but determined. "The core is steady. We can push her harder if needed." Laura gave a single nod. "Hold until the last moment. Let them come." The Dominion ships advanced slowly, confident in their numbers. Their weapons glowed in the darkness, ready to fire. To them, Earth was already lost. But then the shadows broke, and the Resolute Dawn revealed itself. The great ship slid into view, its hull shining faintly under the starlight. Alien sensors screamed with alarms. The Dominion commanders stared in shock at the size and power of the vessel. It was unlike anything they had imagined. Admiral Korath snarled, though unease flickered in his eyes. "Destroy it," he ordered. Dozens of weapons lit up, firing beams of deadly energy. But the human warship did not fall. Its shields shimmered, bending the fire away. The bridge of the Resolute Dawn glowed with light as impact struck, but the ship stood firm. "Shields holding," Rachel reported, her hands flying over the controls. Laura's voice was calm. "Return fire." Daniel pressed the controls and the first railgun shot roared into space. The blast of energy tore through a Dominion cruiser, splitting it apart in a flash of fire. Another shot followed, then another. Each one struck with precision, shattering ships that had ruled the stars for centuries. The galaxy trembled as the battle began. From distant stations, signals recorded every moment. From hidden probes, data raced across networks. Every power in the galaxy watched as humans fought back. On the bridge, Daniel's eyes stayed sharp, guiding each strike. Rachel's voice called out numbers, pushing the ship to its limits. Laura stood tall at the center, her gaze unbroken, her presence steady. The crew moved as one, their fear forgotten in the rhythm of battle. Ships burned. Explosions lit the black sky. The Dominion fleet tried to regroup, but the human warship pressed forward. Every move was calculated, every strike unstoppable. For the first time, the Cathari realized they were not the hunters. They were the prey. In the council chamber, voices fell silent as live reports poured in. The human ship was winning. Delegates who had mocked Earth now stared in disbelief. Those who had warned of change felt their fears confirmed. Across the chamber, one truth spread. The galaxy was no longer safe from humans. Back in orbit, Admiral Korath shouted orders, trying to rally his fleet. But his ships were breaking, his lines collapsing. He could not understand how one vessel could cause such destruction. Rage filled him, but beneath it was fear. "Pull back!" he finally roared. "Pull back!" The retreat began, slow and painful. The Dominion, proud rulers of countless systems, were fleeing from a single human warship. Their arrogance shattered, their confidence destroyed. Laura watched from the bridge, her eyes calm as the enemy withdrew. She did not smile. She did not cheer. She only whispered, "This is only the beginning." Her crew looked at her, understanding what she meant. The Dominion would not stop. Others would come. Humanity had shown its strength, and now the galaxy would respond. Some would fear them. Some would hate them. Some might even try to destroy them. But nothing would erase what had just happened. Humanity had risen. On Earth, cheers broke out in streets and homes. Families cried with relief, leaders embraced one another, and children shouted with joy. The fear that had gripped the planet lifted, replaced by pride. For the first time in history, Earth had stood against the galaxy and won. But aboard the Resolute Dawn, the crew knew the truth. This was not the end of the fight. It was only the start. Laura stood at the window looking into the endless stars. Her heart was heavy, but her spirit was unbroken. She knew humanity had taken its first step into a larger story, and as the stars glimmered outside, the galaxy whispered in fear. Humanity was no longer weak. Humanity had become unstoppable. The Dominion Armada filled the sky above Earth, a swarm of black and red ships blotting out the stars. From the surface, billions of humans stared upward with dread. To them, the heavens no longer belonged to the stars. They belonged to invaders who had come to crush their world. Families gathered in homes, churches, and shelters. Cities fell into silence, holding their breath as the fate of Earth hung in the balance. But hidden in the dark beyond the moon, the Resolute Dawn waited. Its hull was silent, its engines cold, its weapons ready. It was not a ship built for show. It was built for survival. On its bridge, Captain Laura Mitchell stood at the center, her eyes fixed on the vast fleet outside. She felt the fear of her people pressing on her shoulders, but she did not bend. She had promised herself that Earth would not fall while she lived. Lieutenant Daniel Harper leaned over his console, his hands moving with steady precision. He whispered the names of each enemy ship as his system locked onto them, as though naming them gave him control. His heart pounded, but his mind was calm. This was what he was trained for. Nearby, Rachel Porter adjusted the hyperdrive systems. Her fingers danced across the glowing screens, calculating power flow, rerouting energy where it was needed most. She was young, but her courage burned bright. The ship's life was in her hands. The Dominion fleet began to descend toward Earth, their massive dreadnoughts leading the charge. Their weapons glowed, ready to fire on cities, bases, and defenses below. They believed the humans would cower, but in the blackness a spark of light ignited. The Resolute Dawn came alive. Its engines roared with silent fire. Its shields unfolded like wings of light. Its railguns hummed with deadly energy. Slowly it moved out from the moon's shadow, revealing itself to the galaxy. For a moment, silence fell across the Dominion fleet. Their sensors screamed warnings, their captains froze. Before them stood a vessel larger, stronger, and stranger than anything they had seen from humans. Admiral Korath, aboard the Dominion flagship, bared his teeth. "One ship?" he snarled. "They dare challenge us with one ship?" "Destroy it!" The order echoed across the Armada. Dozens of beams of energy shot through the darkness, striking the Resolute Dawn. Explosions of light rippled across its shields. For a heartbeat, the humans on Earth cried out in fear, thinking the ship would fall. But then the railguns fired. The first blast struck a Dominion cruiser, cutting it in half. The second tore through a battleship, sending it spinning in flames. The third smashed into a dreadnought, leaving it broken and silent. In moments, ships that had been symbols of Dominion power for centuries were nothing but wreckage. On the bridge, Daniel's voice was calm but fierce. "Targets destroyed." "Adjusting for next wave," Rachel shouted. "Shield stable, but we're drawing heavy fire." Laura lifted her hand, her voice steady. "Push forward. Break their line." The Resolute Dawn surged ahead, cutting into the heart of the fleet. Railguns fired in perfect rhythm, each shot precise and devastating. The Dominion ships fired back with all their power, but their weapons slid off the human shields, bending and twisting away. Panic spread among their ranks. This was no ordinary fight. This was something they had never prepared for. On Earth, people watched in awe as the battle lit the night sky. Screens across cities showed the flashes of light, the burning wreckage of alien ships. Children pointed upward, no longer afraid but filled with wonder. For the first time, humanity believed they could win. Inside the Dominion fleet, Admiral Korath slammed his fist against the console. "Regroup. Surround it. Do not let them break us." His voice carried authority, but even his officers felt fear. They had never seen such power from humans. Each shot from the warship shattered their pride. The Dominion tried to swarm the Resolute Dawn. Fighters rushed forward, their small ships darting like insects. They fired in waves, trying to overwhelm the shields. But the warship adapted. Automated turrets unfolded, spitting streams of fire. Dozens of fighters exploded before they could reach striking distance. Those that survived were cut apart by railgun fire. Rachel's voice rose above the noise. "Core holding steady. We can take more," Daniel shouted. "Enemy dreadnought approaching port side." Laura's eyes narrowed. "Bring us to meet them. Full power to forward shields." The Resolute Dawn turned, facing the massive dreadnought head-on. For a moment, the two giants seemed to stare at each other across the void. Then they fired. Beams of searing light slammed against the human ship's shields, shaking the bridge. The Resolute Dawn answered with a blast so powerful it pierced the dreadnought's heart. The Dominion ship erupted in flames, its wreckage scattering like ash. The crew cheered for a moment, but Laura raised her hand. "Focus, the battle isn't over." She was right. More ships surged forward, desperate to bring down the human warship. The sky was chaos, fire, smoke, and broken hulls drifting. Yet through it all, the Resolute Dawn pressed forward, unstoppable. From hidden probes across the galaxy, signals raced to distant worlds. Every empire, every council, every leader was watching. They saw what humans had become. No longer were they weak. No longer were they prey. They were something far more dangerous. On the bridge, Daniel's eyes flickered with determination as he guided more shots. Rachel fought to keep the ship's systems balanced, sweat on her brow but fire in her heart. Laura stood unyielding, her presence steady as the stars. They were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting to show the galaxy what humanity truly was. The Dominion fleet began to falter. Their lines broke, their ships scattered. The once proud armada that had terrified worlds for centuries was collapsing under the fury of a single human warship. Admiral Korath roared with rage, but his words no longer carried strength. His fleet was dying, and he knew it. Finally, he gave the order no Dominion admiral had spoken in generations. "Retreat. Pull back." Across the sky, Dominion ships turned and fled. The battle was over. The Resolute Dawn drifted among the wreckage, its shields dimming, its weapons cooling. On Earth, cheers erupted like thunder. The people who had waited in fear now shouted with pride. They had seen their defenders rise. They had seen the invaders fall. On the bridge, Laura looked at her crew. They were exhausted, their faces pale but their eyes burned with victory. She allowed herself a small smile. "Well done," she said softly. "But this is only the beginning." Rachel leaned back in her chair, her voice shaking with relief. "We actually did it," Daniel nodded, though his gaze stayed fixed on the stars. "Yes, but they'll be back. And next time they'll come prepared." Laura's smile faded. She knew he was right. The Dominion would never accept defeat so easily, and other empires watching from afar would see this as both a threat and an opportunity. The galaxy had changed tonight, and there was no going back. The Resolute Dawn floated silently above the Earth, a guardian, a warning, and a promise. Humanity had faced the storm and survived, but as Laura stared into the endless darkness, she whispered to herself, "The true test is still to come." And far across the galaxy, in secret halls and hidden worlds, leaders whispered the same thought. The galaxy trembled not because of what humans had done, but because of what they would do next. The smoke of battle still lingered in Earth's orbit. Wreckage from Dominion ships drifted like broken stars, glowing faintly against the darkness. Some pieces burned as they entered Earth's atmosphere, streaking across the sky like falling comets. For the people below, it was a sign that the invaders had been beaten back. Streets filled with cheering crowds, families embraced, and children shouted with joy. Earth had survived, but aboard the Resolute Dawn, no one celebrated for long. The crew knew the war was not over. Captain Laura Mitchell stood on the bridge, her face calm but her mind heavy with thought. Around her, officers worked quietly, repairing damaged systems, checking weapons, and restoring shields. The battle had been won, but the ship had endured more than anyone admitted. Small cracks ran through the shields. Some weapons were drained of energy. And though Rachel Porter's work kept the hyperdrive core stable, it had been pushed harder than ever before. Rachel leaned back in her chair, her eyes tired. "The core is holding, Captain, but it won't last forever if we fight like that again." Laura nodded, her voice steady. "We'll find a way to make it last. For now, we've bought Earth time. That is enough." Lieutenant Daniel Harper checked the targeting systems, though there were no enemies left to fight. He spoke quietly. "They'll come back. Not just the Dominion. Others saw this battle. They'll all be watching us now." Laura looked at him, then at the stars beyond. "Yes, they'll be watching, and they'll be afraid. Across the galaxy, fear and wonder spread like wildfire. On distant stations, beings gathered around holoscreens, watching the recordings of the human warship. Traders whispered the story in markets. Soldiers repeated it in barracks. Leaders studied it in their halls. The Cathari Dominion, once feared across entire sectors, had been broken by a single human ship. The story carried with it a simple truth. Humanity had changed everything. In the Galactic Council chamber, silence replaced the usual chaos. Delegates sat in uneasy stillness, their eyes fixed on the images playing before them. They saw Dominion ships explode under human fire. They saw the resolute Dawn stand unbroken against a fleet that should have crushed it. Some felt awe, some felt fear, and some felt anger. The Lyari Collective's silver-skinned representative leaned forward. "We warned you," she said. "The humans are no longer prey. They are predators." A delegate from the Orath Union shook his head in disbelief. "This cannot be. One ship cannot do this. Not even the strongest empire has built such power." But the recordings were real and denial no longer mattered. The galaxy now lived with a new truth. Earth was not weak and humanity was not finished. Back aboard the resolute Dawn, Laura called her officers together. They gathered around the command table, the glow of the stars shining on their faces. Rachel spread out the energy reports showing the stress the Corps had taken. "We need time to repair," she said. "If we're hit like that again, we may not hold." Daniel added, "They'll adapt. The next fleet won't attack us the same way. They'll study this battle, find our patterns, and try to break them." Laura listened, her face serious. "Then we adapt faster. They underestimated us once. We will not give them the chance to underestimate us again." The crew nodded. Their exhaustion was clear, but so was their resolve. They were not done. None of them were ready to stop fighting for Earth. On the surface, leaders of Earth's nations gathered in secret. The battle had given them hope, but also fear. One warship had defended the planet, but one warship could not stand forever. They spoke of building fleets, of uniting resources, of preparing humanity for the storms to come. For the first time in history, old divisions began to fade. Survival demanded unity. Meanwhile, deep in the Dominion's territory, Admiral Korath stood in silence before his superiors. His defeat had been witnessed across the stars. The Dominion Council, proud and merciless, glared at him with fury. "You let them humiliate us," one hissed. "You let a single human ship destroy our fleet." Korath's jaw tightened. "They are not what we believed. They are dangerous, stronger than we thought. We must regroup, rebuild, and strike again." But his words did not calm his leaders. To them, failure was unforgivable. Yet even as they cursed him, they too felt the truth he had spoken. Humans were no longer an annoyance. They were a threat, and the Dominion would not rest until that threat was erased. Back on the resolute Dawn, Laura walked alone to the observation deck. She looked down at Earth, the blue oceans and green lands glowing against the black sky. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe. This was what they had fought for. Not power, not pride, but the right to exist. She thought of the families who had cheered, of the children who had watched with wide eyes. They would grow up in a galaxy that no longer ignored humans, and it was her ship that had made that possible. Daniel joined her, standing silently by her side. After a long pause, he spoke. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" Laura gave a faint smile. "Every day. But the future doesn't scare me. Not anymore. We've shown them what we can do. That's enough to change everything." Rachel appeared behind them, holding a datapad with fresh calculations. "If we push the core too hard again, it may fail. But I think I can improve it. If I'm right, it will last longer next time." Her voice was filled with quiet determination. She was not only an engineer anymore. She was a guardian of Earth's hope. The three of them stood together, looking out at the stars. None of them said it, but all of them felt it. The galaxy had shifted. Humanity had stepped onto the stage, and the universe would never be the same. In hidden places, spies carried reports to their masters. Some empires planned to ally with Earth, hoping to share in its strength. Others plotted to destroy humanity before it could grow stronger. But no one ignored them anymore. The days of dismissal were gone. For now, Earth celebrated, and the resolute Dawn drifted quietly above, a lone guardian in the dark. But Captain Laura Mitchell knew the truth. This was not peace. This was the eye of the storm. The real battles had yet to come. As the stars glittered, Laura whispered to herself, "We will be ready. The stars seemed calm, but every corner of the galaxy buzzed with whispers. News of the battle near Earth had spread faster than any ship could travel. Everywhere beings spoke of the human warship that had stood against the Dominion armada. Merchants carried the story across trade routes, soldiers repeated it in training halls, and leaders spoke of it in hushed voices. Humanity was no longer unknown. Humanity was no longer weak. Humanity had arrived. On Earth, the skies were peaceful for the first time in weeks. Children laughed again, playing in the streets without fear of fire from the heavens. Families rebuilt homes, repaired what little damage the Dominion had managed to cause, and celebrated the strange feeling of safety. For the first time in history, all nations stood together, united under one truth. Survival depended on unity. Old rivalries were forgotten, at least for now. Everyone looked up at the stars and whispered the same word: hope. But aboard the Resolute Dawn, there was no rest. The crew worked tirelessly, repairing systems, reinforcing shields, and restoring power to the hyperdrive core. The battle had proven their strength, but it had also shown their limits. They had won, but not without cost. Small cracks lined the hull. Energy cells were drained, and several decks carried scars of battle. Rachel Porter spent long hours running calculations, trying to improve the hyperdrive core. She refused to let the ship fail when it was needed most. Laura Mitchell walked the halls of the ship, speaking quietly with her crew. She thanked them one by one, her calm presence giving them strength. She carried herself with steady confidence, but inside her mind weighed heavy thoughts. The Dominion would return. Others would come. This victory was not the end of war. It was the beginning of something greater. Daniel Harper sat alone in the targeting control room late at night. The glow of the screens lit his face as he studied recordings of the battle. He replayed every shot, every maneuver, every strike. He whispered to himself, not in fear but in determination. He wanted to be ready when the next storm came. He wanted to ensure no mistake would cost them victory again. The galaxy beyond Earth was restless. In hidden chambers, the Dominion plotted revenge. Their leaders demanded retribution, their pride burning from humiliation. Fleets were being rebuilt, weapons redesigned, strategies reshaped. They would not forgive, and they would not forget. In other empires, leaders debated what to do. Some argued to ally with humans to share in their rising power. Others demanded preemptive strikes, hoping to crush humanity before it grew stronger. The Galactic Council was split. The chamber, once filled with arguments about trade and borders, was now dominated by one question: what to do about Earth? Meanwhile, probes from distant civilizations floated near Earth, gathering data, watching, listening. Spies moved in shadows seeking human secrets. And across the stars, people spoke of the Resolute Dawn like a legend, a ghost ship that had defeated an empire. Back on the bridge of the warship, Rachel presented her findings. She looked tired, but her voice carried determination. I can stabilize the core. If I reroute the power flow through secondary channels, it will last longer in battle. But we'll need more resources. Earth alone cannot provide everything we need. Laura nodded, her voice calm. Then we find allies. But we choose carefully. Not everyone who offers a hand will be a friend. Daniel added. Some will come pretending to help, but they'll only want our secrets. We have to be ready for that too. The crew agreed. Humanity had entered a larger game, one filled with deception and danger. They could not trust easily, but neither could they stand alone forever. On Earth's surface, leaders met in great halls discussing the future. Some wanted to build more warships like the Resolute Dawn. Others feared it would only draw more enemies. But in the end, they all agreed humanity had to prepare. The days of hiding behind Earth's oceans and skies were gone. The stars were open now, and they had to step forward. Weeks passed, but the shadow of the Dominion's defeat still lingered. Across human cities, statues were built to honor the crew of the Resolute Dawn. Children learned their names in schools. Songs were written, stories told. Humanity needed heroes, and Laura, Daniel, Rachel, and their crew became those heroes. Yet, aboard the ship, they did not feel like legends. They felt like soldiers preparing for the next fight. One quiet night, Laura stood on the observation deck staring into the endless dark. Daniel joined her, his hands folded behind his back. "Do you think they'll ever stop coming?" he asked. Laura shook her head slowly. "No, they'll never stop. But that's not what matters. What matters is that we don't stop either." Rachel appeared, carrying a datapad full of new designs. She smiled faintly. "If I'm right, the next version of the core will make us even stronger. Let them come. The three of them stood together, their eyes fixed on the stars. They were not afraid. They were ready. Far across the galaxy, the Dominion prepared its fleets for war. Ships larger than any before were being built. Weapons more powerful than ever were being tested. Their leaders promised revenge, their voices filled with fury. But even as they plotted, fear lingered in their hearts. Fear of one ship, one crew, one people who had changed everything. The galaxy had trembled when the human warship emerged. It would tremble again because humanity was not finished. They were only beginning. And as the resolute dawn drifted silently above Earth, its hull scarred but unbroken, Laura whispered to herself, "This is our place now. The stars are ours too." The warship gleamed faintly against the starlight, a beacon of defiance, a symbol of survival, and a promise of what was to come. For the first time in history, humanity was not a shadow in the galaxy. Humanity was a force, and the galaxy, once proud and unchallenged, would never be the same again.